What's up, y'all? So today's guest is a past Peace Corps volunteer. He was in China. He came back over a year ago, right before COVID started. So I'm gonna let him in this room, and we'll get going on this podcast.
Hey, hello.
Hey, there he is. How we doing, man?
Good. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing good, dude. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Nice little plant you got behind you.
Oh, thanks.
That
Yeah,
thing's
I try to keep
large.
the house as green as possible.
Yeah, I feel that. I got like 20 house plants.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it makes nice air and kind of just makes you feel not so bad staying inside during this quarantine all the time. Just have some green spaces to keep you company. It's nice.
Yeah. No, true. That's some real stuff. I honestly believe that. And like just like the circulation and the airflow, it's I bring the jungle inside, you know?
Absolutely. How are things
Yeah.
with you, Matt?
I'm doing good, dude. I've been teaching at CR the last few semesters and still doing my Rotaract stuff, and Inspire One's kind of on a dormant side right now because no traveling. So not sending any travelers overseas. So really
Right.
focusing on teaching and starting my new sustainable business, trying to get sustainable products sold.
Wow. What are
Kind
you
of
what are you teaching?
I'm teaching intro to personal finance, business communications, and managing people and projects.
Sounds like exciting stuff, Matt.
Yeah, it's business, all business classes.
Okay, and you have a master's in business, is that right?
Yeah, I got my MBA at HSU in 2019.
Okay, our very own HSU. Congratulations.
Dude, yeah, you work for HSU, huh?
I do, yes. I work with HSU in partnership with True Educational Talent Search. It's a federally funded Department of Education program that works with youth ages 6th grade to 12th grade, helping foster academic excellence on a path to higher education. So lots of experience with students, and Humboldt State's a great school. Always love to see fellow alumni and people representing the Lost Coast.
Heck yeah. How long have you been with that group, or what is it called again? What department at HSU is it?
So it's not actually a department through HSU. It's a department. It's an organization through the Department of Ed.
Oh,
It's
okay.
a federally funded program. It's called Trio Educational Talent Search. Um, so that's the name.
Okay, trio. Nice. That sounds good. Like you're helping out kids like get their career paths going, like to school or college or maybe even jobs.
Yeah, so there's 4 key areas that we cover when working with our students. So the first area, of course, is study skills and organization. So just making sure that students are, getting their assignments in on time. They're aware, what their assignments actually are.
Mhm.
Uh, Basically, just good organizational kind of housekeeping skills. Certainly, in a time like this, when students are doing school from home, they need all the extra support that they can get. Now that they're out of the classroom, out of that structured space that maybe they're more accustomed to. So we also look at college explorations, so really kind of identifying what are the students' skills, what are their interests, what are their goals, and kind of tying that up with specific colleges or programs that might speak to them. And then we also tie that into career exploration. So looking at, okay, so we've identified what kind of education you'd like to pursue, but then what's next, right? You're not in school forever. So what do you want to do once you have your education? And we have those conversations and provide that kind of support. And then finally, we look at financial aid. So of course, unfortunately, here in the United States, higher education for the most part is not free, right? It costs money. So however, there's lots of forms of financial aid out there, things such as FAFSA, of course, which is usually the first thing we promote to students, the most surefire way of getting federal funding to go to school. But we also look at grants, scholarships, and then bring the conversation about student loans and credit. So there's kind of a broad range of things that we like to cover with our students. And that's why we try to get them as young as in 6th grade and then try to work with them all the way up to their senior year when they're actually getting ready to apply for college and financial aid.
Dude, that's so awesome. That's so needed for so many people.
I think so. I think students really seem to benefit and appreciate being part of the program. And this is a federal program, so it's not just here in Humboldt. It's all across the country.
Mm,
Um, I don't know how many students are involved, but the number is in the tens of thousands. So it really seems
yeah,
to, help a lot of people out.
definitely. That's awesome, dude. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So I want to hear about Peace Corps. I'm really intrigued on I'm really intrigued on Peace Corps in general because in my time I spent in East Africa, I met a few Peace Corps volunteers over there, and
That was in Uganda, right?
yeah, in Uganda, and they had told me about their personal experience there, and honestly, haven't really talked to anybody else that has actually done Peace Corps. So I'm really curious on like how you kind of got started, why you did it, and how long you did it, and where you did it. So if you want to give us a little crash course on where
Crash
you
course
went,
on the Peace Corps.
yeah.
Right. Well, that's quite the tale to tell. It's hard to know exactly where to begin. Um, I mean, I guess I'll start from the first time I heard of Peace Corps. And that was actually a while back, probably during the days when you and I still go with some of the other locals to the health sport, to the sauna, and
Mm.
hit up those sauna sessions. And
Oh, so
um,
nice.
so nice. I know I miss that a lot. It's little things like that during
Mhm.
this pandemic that I'm really craving.
For sure.
Anyways, I digress. So it was one of those times when I was in the sauna. I must have been 18 or 19 years old, and um, just sitting there, kind of baking to the heat. And I always loved the conversations that would spring up amongst largely strangers during the time in there. It's one of those funny places you wouldn't really expect to uh, hear a hubbub from the local community, but it was one of my favorite areas to pick up on random conversations and meet random interesting people. And that day, there happened to be a pretty uh, ferocious conversation that was happening as I walked in, and it was between two people, an older gentleman and a younger guy. And it seems that the younger guy had just actually finished his own tour at the Peace Corps. I believe he was serving somewhere in Micronesia, so somewhere out in the Pacific Islands. And he was really just hyping up this whole experience of the Peace Corps and to this older man, and then in turn to me. And I was just soaking up every word. And it just sounded like something I really would be interested in doing. So I asked him some questions about it, and he directed me to uh, go to the local website for the Peace Corps in my area, because I guess every area in the country has their own like district that the Peace Corps operates within. So
Ah,
here in Humboldt County, our area falls within the North Bay Area district. And so I did just that. And when I got home, I read up on the Peace Corps and started realizing that this truly is a huge global approach to U.S. exposure abroad. And um, yeah, I thought, okay, well, this sounds like a pretty cool goal to work towards. So uh, that's kind of how I heard about it. And then later on, I guess, during my years myself studying at Humboldt State University, uh, the degrees that I was attempting to finish had a lot to do with, internationally focused fields, right? So um, I had a dual degree in communications, political science, and international studies and foreign relations. And so obviously a lot of the focus of those disciplines is on the interactions the United States has with the world, and all of the different countries and peoples and cultures out there. And uh, yeah, I just soaked it up. I really loved everything I was learning in those fields. And during that time, I did get in contact with the local district Peace Corps representative for our area. Her name was Barbara Hooper, I believe was her last name. And yeah, Barbara was great. I actually worked with, I believe you know her, Tanya Mejia. Do you remember Tanya from Humboldt State? She was actually a student at Humboldt State University. She was a communication degree student. Um, and her whole emphasis was on prisons and prison groups. And
Tanya.
Tanya,
Yes, she was great.
yeah, Tanya was
Yes.
awesome. Yeah, so
Uh-huh.
Tanya was actually president of the communications club, and I that was one of the clubs I uh, joined while I was at college. And uh, she was actually a Peace Corps ambassador for Humboldt State University. So uh, even though later on now I don't think she pursued the Peace Corps, being a Peace Corps ambassador is still an excellent opportunity for students who are still in college to get exposure to the Peace Corps, and also volunteering, interning with a government entity, and representing advocacy and social justice and human rights. And so that was right up Tanya's avenue. And
Oh yeah.
she actually got me in touch with Barb. And yeah, over the next couple of years, I would attend every time Barb would come up to HSU from the Bay Area every 2 or 3 months. She would do a little kind of expose on the Peace Corps at Humboldt State, and I would make sure to always, attend those meetings with her.
Yeah.
And every time I felt like I gleaned a little bit more about what service of the Peace Corps would be about. And then she really helped facilitate when I graduated in 2018. So that summer, so like June, July timeframe of 2018, Barbara hit me up over, I think it was LinkedIn, and she was like, "Hey, I know you just graduated. I see from your updated status on LinkedIn, and I'm curious, if you're still interested in serving with the Peace Corps." And I said, "Yes, absolutely."
Yes.
I had just come back from doing my kind of post-graduation little celebration trip in Thailand, and I had just come back to the U.S. after spending 3 weeks in Thailand, and
Ooh,
I was
nice.
super ready to, go back out overseas, because at that point, it's already very much passion and almost like an addiction for me to just travel.
Yeah.
I love traveling and experiencing new cultures and lands and people. So I told her, yes, absolutely, I'm trying to do the Peace Corps. And she said, "Hey, well, typically when people apply for the Peace Corps, they go through the Peace Corps' website, which is a .gov website. It is through the government, and they kind of set up their profile. And in the past, years prior to my own application, the Peace Corps application process was definitely different. It's definitely changed significantly in like the last 5 or so years. And in the past, when people would sign up to volunteer with the Peace Corps, they'd fill out their profile and everything. But that was about it. They wouldn't really get to like pick where they wanted to go.
Whoa.
But that actually changed within the last 5 years. Now you can actually like specify what region or even what country in the world you want to go. And now actually some of the listings on the Peace Corps website will be for individual countries. So not even regions, but like specific countries. And so when Barb hit me up, she said, "Yeah, I have this specific program in China. Have you ever wanted to go to China?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I want to go everywhere. China sounds great." And she said, "Well, it would be a little different than most Peace Corps opportunities." And I kind of inquired more, and it turns out that this is one of the few, if not the only, Peace Corps position that really entailed the volunteers being like solely a university teacher. So I also have some university experience, such as yourself, in teaching, and yeah, and that kind of really lit me up, because I did just really kind of right off that high of graduating from Humboldt State. Definitely, up until that point, the greatest years of my life, and just really just excited with everything I was doing there, with all the different clubs and nonprofits that I was also taking part in, and just my own studies. And I wanted to continue, being in on a college campus, which I really feel like is an environment I really was thriving in and connecting with. So I took her up on the opportunity, and I filled out the application. It's definitely a process. So I think I begun in like maybe like mid to late June, and I didn't actually finish the whole process. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through, as with most government positions. And I don't think the process really ended until like October.
Whoa.
But then I was able to submit that in October after doing all the checks and whatnot, and hoops. And then I got, I think at the end of October, the notice that I'd been accepted. So it was a pretty fast turnaround time once you actually apply. So then I had almost like, I was accepted at the end of October, but then I wouldn't be shipping off until June of the following year. So I kind of had a lot of time to both like mentally and emotionally prepare. So
totally.
Yeah. So there was definitely a chunk of time between me getting accepted and me actually leaving. Um, and so, yeah, in June, I believe it was actually June 13th. I still remember. I got my itinerary and got on the flight out of the Arcata airport, and I flew down to Los Angeles, where it was kind of like the staging point. And I
Hmm.
met it was about 170 other volunteers from
Whoa.
all over the country, and they were in our cohort. So the way the Peace Corps is set up, it is a branch or under the umbrella of the State Department, even though it's kind of its own thing for sure.
Hmm.
Um, and even though it is a diplomatic mission, the way it's structured is almost kind of like the military. So they have these things called cohorts. And so cohorts are like groups of volunteers that go each year. And so we were the 25th cohort for China, which means we were the 20th every year. They send a new cohort of
Yeah.
volunteers. So we were the 25th year of volunteers going to China. So
Nice. Let's go.
I know, yeah, it was pretty cool. And I was 25 at the time, so I felt like it was destiny. It was meant to
Yeah,
be
that was the number of the
25,
year.
25. So
So
yes.
100 some different people, all who just met each other. And then you just like, was that in the airport or somewhere in LA?
Yeah, so it wasn't at the airport where we all met each other. So I touched down in LAX, and then we went to the Doubletree Hilton, which was like a few miles away. And we actually stayed there for 2 days. And during
Hmm.
those 2 days, we were kind of debriefed by some of the Peace Corps representatives from DC who were also there. And we did, like some team building exercises and kind of social mixers, just really kind of starting to get to know
Okay.
each other because we would be
Awesome.
living and working side by side with each other for the next 27 months. And
Hmm.
yeah, and then I think on the 15th of June, 2019 is when we all packed our bags from the hotel and went to LAX and then took the long flight over to China. Um,
So long.
yeah, very long. I think it was definitely probably the longest flight I've ever been on. It was like 22 or 23 hours. We flew through Korea. We had a
Uh-huh.
layover in Korea in Seoul for like, I think
Hmm.
2.5, 3 hours. It was a long flight. I definitely took a lot of naps and watched a lot of movies and whatnot.
Yeah, I
Um,
feel that.
yeah, so then we got in China and we touched down in Chengdu, which is a city of 14 and a half million people, and the Chinese province of Sichuan, which is in western
Whoa.
central China. Um, Sichuan's a very famous province for their food, especially for their hot pot, which in Chinese is hogguo, and
Mm.
really just delicious food. It's a huge foodie city. It's a huge kind of uh,
Awesome.
technology city. It's a huge music city as well. The
Mm.
Chinese trap scene is still relatively new, like trap rap music,
Whoa, yeah.
and Chengdu is kind of like the center of that scene. So
Well,
all
sounds
the
like a great place. Tech,
yeah,
food, music.
yep, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a popping place. So we touched down in it, and yeah, that was the biggest city I think to this date I've ever really been in, and just kind of felt like buildings going in every direction for hours, and just so many people, so many people, and yeah, then we kind of started debriefing for the next, I think it was 6 or 8 weeks. It's kind of fuzzy now, but it was more than a month where we stayed at this hotel for like the first week and a half, did a bunch of um, just kind of met all the Chinese Peace Corps staff there, both Chinese nationals and Americans,
Hmm.
and just started doing the training. And then after the second week, we actually went to go live with host families throughout Chengdu. So I had my very
Oh,
own Chinese host family that I lived with. Um, I had a Chinese host dad and mom and two brothers and a cousin. So I
that's
got the
so
whole
cool.
experience of living side by side with Chinese nationals and really kind of just getting thrown into their culture and learning, what makes Chinese people tick, and also it was a great experience for them to be able to see me, as an American. I'm pretty sure I was the first American and perhaps even the first Westerner that my Chinese family's really seen or interacted with. So That was super great. Really got very close with my Chinese host family. They're all super great. We ate a lot of good food and shared a lot of good laughs. And they started teaching me how to write Chinese calligraphy, which
Oh, that's
is
cool.
super, super
It's
hard.
mind blowing how the characters.
It's mind blowing, and how
Mm,
fast they can do it. The super
mm,
intricate. It really makes our written language look pretty simple when stacked
very.
up against theirs. And Yeah, that was great. And during that time, also every day I would um, go to a school in the center of the city that was a Chinese culture and language immersion academy. And so there I would study Mandarin and study Chinese culture. And then also we started getting like TEFL training, so teaching English as a foreign language training, and
Mm,
we would get local high schools classes that would come through our academy, and we would start doing like classes with them, just getting used to teaching Chinese students. So that was a really exciting time. And during that time, I also got really close to the other volunteers there, and um, both in school and out of school, just exploring the city and Chengdu in general. Uh, and then I think it was week 8 or 9 is when we got our permanent postings. And so,
permanent
um,
posting.
and that was not in Chengdu. That was, and it was not in Sichuan. It was actually in a completely different province, but not too far. It was actually the province right below Sichuan. This
Okay.
province was called Guizhou, and I was in this city called Anshun, which was a kind of a suburb offshoot of the provincial capital Guiyang. Um, and so Anshun is a small city of just 1 million people. I say small because that really is small in
Small,
Chinese
a
terms.
million.
1 million people. Uh, yeah, and packed my bags in Chengdu, said bye to my host family with as few tears as possible, and went down to Anshun in Guizhou province. And yeah, that's really when you start traveling between the provinces in China, you start realizing that China is actually a very diverse and dynamic place.
Mm,
Maybe this isn't super apparent to people that have never been to China or don't know much about China. You always hear these statistics that everyone in China speaks, Mandarin, or that um, everyone is almost everyone's ethnically Han Chinese, but that's actually far from the case. Something I begun to witness and understand, even as soon as I was in Chengdu, is that um, everyone does not only speak Mandarin. Mandarin is like it's the government language. So that's the language that's spoken in school. That's the language you hear on the television, and that's the language you'll read in newspapers and things like that.
okay.
But China is a huge place, of course, and they have very many like diverse ethnic groups throughout the country who all have their own languages, their own dialects, and
Mm,
it's so diverse that it's almost like every city has their own dialect. So
whoa.
really, there's like thousands of variations of languages
Thousands.
in China.
Okay.
So in Chengdu, Hua means language, right, or like dialect. So
Wow.
so Putonghua means Mandarin, and that's like the standard language, right? But
Uh-huh.
then in Chengdu, everyone speaks not only Chengduhua, which is specific to the city of Chengdu, they also speak Sichuanhua, which is specific to the greater province of Sichuan. So then when I got down, at that point I'd already started learning how to understand Mandarin to an extent and speak it a little bit, and also how to understand the specific dialect, Chengdu Hua, Sichuan Hua. But now in Guizhou, it was a completely new province, new ethnic groups living there, and new Huas, right? There's Guizhou
Duhwas.
Hua and Anshun Hua, and
Oh
so
my God.
that was really a lot to kind of wrap my head around. Was
Mhm.
just right off the bat, not again almost restarting my language, having to learn all the new ways of speaking and understanding. Um, but it was great. Yeah, I had my own apartment on the campus in Anshun, kind of like I lived in a big apartment block with other students and teachers sharing the same apartment block with me, but I had my own apartment.
Oh, that's cool.
Um, it was cool. I had a nice view of like the lake that was next to the school. And Anshun is a very green city in China. it's like a destination that a lot of people from the larger, more metropolitan cities in China will go for like nature and to get
Wow.
fresh air. So that was something I'd requested the Peace Corps. They send me to a place that in some ways kind of reminded me of home here in Humboldt,
Yeah,
very
we got the
green.
trees and the forests.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
yeah, so Anshan's cool. The Guizhou in general is one of the cleanest, greenest provinces in China, and they have a very interesting topography where I'm trying to remember. Excuse me, I'm trying to remember the name of uh, what you actually call it. They're like little mountains, and there's like
Mm.
tons of them. Maybe you've seen photos of it. It's very like visually striking. All these like little like rocky hill mountains that are all very green on top, and there's a lot of them. They're all very close to each other.
Uh,
I'll send you a photo after the
yeah,
podcast.
so I'm sure it's something I've seen before. It's like
Yeah,
famous.
I'm trying to
Hmm.
remember the name, but it's fine. Anyway, so yeah, very very different from home. I definitely
Different
not
type of greenery or just different type of nature.
all of that, and definitely definitely a striking difference from California and Humboldt County, and go figure. And yeah, and so I was living on campus at Anshun Dashway, which means Anshun University. It was the primary. I think there's two universities in that city, and that was like the primary one. The other one was like a technical university, so more like vocational skill kind of training. But the one I was at was the more standard one, and I think the total student body of the campus is actually somewhat similar to Humboldt State. It was around 10,000 students.
Okay.
Um, and I taught around 400 Chinese students. So I think
Oh,
that's spread between 6 classes. And of course, English was like the main subject that we would focus on teaching, but I had opportunities in some of my other classes to teach a little bit about politics and history and economics and geography. I don't think
awesome.
that I myself, have quite a bit of experience with my own, degrees in education. So,
Yeah,
um, and also doing like a lot of projects like outside of the class with my students. Really, the
that's
Peace Corps
cool.
really wants you to, immerse yourself in your community in ways not just through the classroom but through like community projects and volunteering. And so I helped start like a student radio station on campus where every week, like twice a week, I would meet up with some of my students from some of my classes who were involved with like the radio program on campus, and we would start like an English hour radio show, and they would broadcast that both to the campus through like their loudspeakers, but also on their radio frequency just through the city. So that was pretty cool. And sometimes we had people come into the radio room to like practice their English with me on the radio station, or ask questions about America and like American culture. And then they'd also love
uh,
to like receive questions from me that I might have had for them about
mm,
China or Guizhou or Anshun. And it was also a good opportunity to kind of ask the locals, all the things to do in the area. So, like I said, Anshun is a very kind of nature focused area. So I think they have Asia's largest. I think actually might be the world's like one of the world's like third largest waterfall, something like that.
whoa.
Anshu Shui, and that was only like an hour out of the city. So I definitely went there with some of the
That's
other
sweet.
volunteers to check it out.
Yeah, that's like Niagara Falls big, probably.
Was really big. Yeah, it was
Hmm.
really big. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of that. I mean, I feel like I'm going off. I don't know if you want to like
Well,
ask
so
questions
yeah,
or
no, I'm just so the teaching, so 400 students.
yeah.
You said 6 classes. So is that 2 classes a semester, or was that 6 classes each? Or what do they do? Do they have semesters? Do they have
Yeah, so they have
trimesters?
semesters just like here in the States, a fall and a
Hmm.
spring semester starts roughly around the same time.
Uh-huh.
Um, and well, so here's the thing, Matt. I was supposed to be there for 27 months, right? But then I'd only gotten through my first semester, fall semester, and then it was the winter time. And then, this is December, January of uh, 2019, 2020. So we all know
Oh,
what
yeah.
happened then with COVID-19 and the pandemic. So
Whoa, and you're there. You're just right there in
yeah, I
China.
was right there. I was kind of at the epicenter of it all. So
Mhm.
unfortunately, our service was cut short about after 8 months. So because we had to get evacuated. The Peace Corps
Mm,
evacuated us. So there's a lot of emotions and experiences just tied up
yeah.
into that whole process of, when I signed up to go to the Peace Corps, I had made the commitment to serve both my country and the host country, for 27 months.
Mhm.
It's more than 2 years, and I had mentally and physically and emotionally prepared for all of that.
Yeah.
But only after 8 months, I was being told, both by my government and the Chinese government, that the gig is up and it was time to pack my bags. So uh, yeah, that was definitely pretty intense to just see the whole process of China. Because they started the lockdown a lot sooner than the rest of the world. They'd
Mm,
already kind of started it in December, and definitely in January. So I really
wow.
just saw the process of the whole country locking down, which was definitely a kind of eye-opening experience. Just seeing how this huge, huge nation of 1.5 billion people just come screeching to a halt and closing down. And China, of course, is a very technologically advanced country, so the way they're also implementing their tech in their lockdown. So uh, having to go through a lot of checkpoints, both on the motorcades through the cities, but also on the bullet trains, because they do have really good bullet trains, which I would
Mm,
use every
mm.
week to get around. So just kind of seeing the whole screening process and also going through it myself, and yeah, it was definitely a harrowing experience for sure.
When the virus first came to be, or do you remember like the first time you heard about it? It's probably December. What was what was China's first reaction to the virus? Was it just in Wuhan, and how close were you to Wuhan?
Right. So I actually started reading about the virus actually a couple months prior, because I do love reading the news and kind of just staying on top of the happenings. And I remember even as far back as like maybe like I don't know, like October or November of
Whoa.
2019, kind of like first reading some articles about, reports of this new virus that was detected in Wuhan. So Wuhan, trying to remember how far they were. They were not in my province. They're not in Guizhou. They're in another province. Can't remember off the top of my head the name of their province, but uh, it was a province more east than me, closer to
Okay,
the
so they're a
coast.
plane. Yeah, they're a plane quite
Right,
away. Yeah.
right. So yeah, yeah, exactly. It was like 7 or 8 hours away from where I was. Um, so relatively far. But I remember reading about this in like possibly October, definitely by November, like reading articles about this new virus strain that no one knows anything about, and the Chinese government seems to not really be disclosing much information about it. And I remember kind of being like, huh, well, I'm sure this won't, be anything.
Yeah.
And then by December, and late December, the Peace Corps had finally kind of, before that, us volunteers, we had we're always communicating through this platform called WeChat, which is like
Mhm.
China's like primary form of social like communication. And so, we're always uh, talking to each other about it. And by December, everyone in the Peace Corps in our cohort was already kind of blowing each other up, like everyone was talking about this virus and like, what does this mean? When's the Peace Corps going to finally talk to us about it? And it wasn't until like early January that the Peace Corps finally did like officially approach us with this and say, yes, I'm sure you've all heard there is this virus that's starting to outbreak in China, and we're all closely monitoring it. And as of now, like it's hard to say, where this is going to go, and uh, you know, uh, just kind of stand by, right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of what we were doing, and then it was near the end of January. I'm trying to remember the exact day. It was like the 27th or something like that, 26th. We got the official kind of notification from the Peace Corps, like, hey,
Yeah.
you're going to be evacuated in the next 48 hours. So get all your things together. Like, we're leaving. Um, and so that's kind of a lot to take in, in my whole life. I feel like it was
48
finally
hours.
starting to like, take shape and form there in China. I'd really, my whole apartment was set up. I had all these new friends and community groups like within my city and university. So I feel like I'd only, my Mandarin speaking and my Anshunhua was really starting to take off. And I feel like it was just beginning. I feel like I was really just starting to lay my roots down. And then instantly, in a blink of an eye, all that kind of went up. So kind of makes you realize, how uncertain life can be, and how you have to learn to adapt, which of course it was one of the key traits that the Peace Corps looks for when hiring volunteers is, are you adaptable, right? Are you able to change at a moment's notice? So that entire situation really kind of put that adaptability within myself to the test, and really, yeah, it was a testing experience, but I made it. I got out obviously, and
Mhm.
came back to the United States, and then I felt like I was kind of escaping the virus, and then I feel like the virus kind of followed me to the rest of the world, and here we
Yeah.
are in 2021. So
What a wild year it's been. I know. I can't believe you were totally mentally ready to be there for 2 years, and you were like halfway through, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh yeah, 48 hours." Like that's pretty
yeah,
insane.
yeah, I wasn't even halfway, Matt. I was
You
eight
weren't even.
months, 8 months out of 27. So it was like a quarter
Yeah,
basically of the time. Yeah, it was
that
pretty
was that
extreme.
was hard. I'm sure that was hard with all the friends and family. I mean, you're ready to be in that community for months, years, and then having to come back. Like you
Yeah,
said,
definitely.
adapting was probably key, but still hard nonetheless.
Definitely not anticipated. But that's it's part of the Peace Corps, being adapted. So I was able to adapt to the situation, and
Hmm.
able to say my goodbyes and pack my bags and get out of there in a safe and timely manner. And yeah, came back to California, came back up to Humboldt, and I'm still constantly in contact with students and friends back in
Nice.
China, and just other volunteers here in America, and made some really good friends with Americans too there, and met some really uh, inspiring and brilliant individuals from all corners of the United States, and definitely made some
Mm,
lifelong friends, and also with the Chinese, made some really good friends, and really got to experience that culture in a way that I don't know that I would have any other way, besides the Peace Corps. I feel like when serving
hmm.
with the Peace Corps, you really experience the country that you're in this case for me, China, from the perspective of the locals, because you're living with them, you're working with them, you're walking with them side by side every
Hmm.
day. And, in my city, like besides me and the one other Peace Corps volunteer that was there with me in my specific city, her and I, and she was from San Diego. So, we were both Californians. We shared that affinity with another, and,
Oh, nice.
became good friends. But besides the two of us, we were the only Americans and quite possibly the only Westerners in our entire city. The whole city was predominantly Chinese people, so uh,
Oh,
it was
that's really immersed.
very immersed. And I don't know that if I was just there as like a tourist, I would probably go to the where the tourists go, Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, places like that.
Very true.
Before the Peace Corps, I never really even heard of Chengdu, which now it seems like crazy because it's such a huge city, and same with Anshwin and all these other places I would have never heard of or even known to look for if it
Hmm.
wasn't for my time serving with the Peace Corps. So I'm really appreciative of that. I'm really appreciative of being able to, uh, live with the locals and really, understand China on this whole kind of deeper level that I don't think any other experience would have really given me. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, those are the things that I focus on certainly moving forward, and kind of just treasuring those gems, and just and those memories, and keeping those contacts alive, both with
Definitely.
American friends I made, Chinese friends
Hmm.
that I made, and uh, yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
was cool.
So yeah, you met a lot of people from the United States in that experience. Were those 100 people once you left after those first 8 weeks? Did you ever see them again? Did you ever travel within your 8 months and then meet
Oh,
up on
definitely.
weekends?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I was traveling all the time, basically every weekend. I would do a little
Oh,
trip
awesome.
because the trains are amazing there. The bullet trains, just
Hmm.
so advanced, so clean, so fast. these are magnetic levitation trains, or maglev for short. There's only 3 countries in the world that have it, including China, South Korea, and Japan, and that's it. No other country in the world has these kinds of trains. And it's in the name, magnetic levitation. So there's no wheels on these trains. They're levitating several inches off of the
Okay, I've
ground.
heard of these. They're like the magnets are pushing them at all directions, and it's just like
That's right. The magnets are pushing the
sick.
train cars up above the track, and you go at these astronomical speeds. So, I was going like 320 kilometers an hour. So
Whoa.
it really makes a long, and there's no traction, right? Because there's no friction of the wheel on the track. So
So
it's
you're not feeling like
like an
or
airplane.
like any,
You're gliding. You're gliding.
wow, that's
Incredible.
sweet.
Yeah, and it's super cool. And you have the big windows, you can just see the countryside flying by. I think the best way to see a country, of course, is from the road, a road trip, and what better way than from a train?
Oh, so you even have a view. You're not like in a
Yeah.
tunnel the whole time.
Well,
You got
there were tunnels, but most of the time you have a view, right? So only tunnels when you're like, going through a mountain or something. But
mm,
uh yeah, so I mean I saw a lot of the country every weekend, and they're cheap too. They're even for Chinese standards. It's
mhm.
very affordable for Chinese people to travel on these trains. So um, I was able to bounce around to many different cities in my province to, kind of link up with other volunteers, other friends that I made, and explore their cities and
Mhm.
schools and areas. And, I went back to Chengdu once also with everyone. We all kind of reconvened.
Nice.
So yeah, constantly kind of bouncing around, seeing all the different places, seeing as much as I could. I definitely made a point to see
Mhm.
as much of the country as I could while I was there. And I definitely, even though I was only there for such a short time compared to what I was supposed to be there for, I was able to do and see quite a lot in that short period of time. So I am
Mhm.
thankful for the ability to do that. But definitely kind of got me scratching my head a little bit when I came back to the States, and I was like, well, where's our trains? Like, come on, let's get
Where
things
is our
going.
trains? I don't
Exactly.
know.
Where's our public transportation? Because that's honestly the key. In many
Mhm.
ways, when you're in a country like China, especially, you really feel like when you're in these huge cities, like, I mean, China's going through a very transformative time right now, right? You're hearing about it in the news all the time. China's rising, right? And
Mhm. Yeah, we do hear that.
I think they're projected, to be the world's largest economy by the end of the decade. And China is a very, of course, ancient country, right? And culture and people, as
Mhm.
diverse as they are, um, they have like 5,000 years of history, and they
Wow.
just go way back, farther back than most countries have ever even existed, right? So,
Wow.
or really any countries existed, right? That
Mhm.
currently exist today. So, yeah, they have a very ancient culture and heritage and civilization that's come an extremely long way. And it's amazing to see now, like their take on the 21st century, and really just how quickly they're developing,
Mm.
and just kind of how advanced they are. In a lot of ways that you don't really see anywhere else in the world. So when you're in these a lot of their urbanizations also only really happened uh, in like the last 30 years, right? They've really been building up in the last 30 years. So all these cities they have all these new gleaming, shining buildings everywhere, all this state of the art
Ooh.
transportation and public amenities. So it was a lot to take in, right? And then coming back to the States kind of makes me really understand the need and purpose of implementing
Mhm.
that same kind of level of investment into our own infrastructure and public transportation and
Mhm.
sustainability is really it's the key to the future. And countries like
Mhm.
China, I think, are really realizing that. So yeah, definitely
Def
super pro train.
Pro
Anytime I
train.
see anything here in the United
Yeah.
States, I always try to jump on that and help promote it in any way that I can. And hopefully, I think
Mhm.
I think we might have an administration now in place that has a little bit more of a focus on these kinds of developments in terms of infrastructure and public
Yeah.
transportation
I
sustainability.
hear
So
that.
fingers crossed that we really get the ball rolling, because I think we're due. We need
Yeah,
to catch up with
definitely.
the rest of the world. We need to
Yeah.
catch up with countries like China when it comes to things like that.
Sustainable development. We need it. And
Absolutely.
something about China I think that also gets thrown around, and I think I want to get your take on it. Is like kind of the overprotective, overregulated, surveillance government, the communist government. What was your take and experience on, did you ever talk to locals about what it was like, or what is your take on how the government control is there?
Yeah, so you're touching on, of course, a pretty contentious topic, right? So um, the mission that the Peace Corps there, first and foremost, was diplomatic in nature, right?
Mhm.
So being a diplomat, of course, and operating within, another country, you have to obey the laws and customs of the country that you're operating within, right?
Mhm.
So there was some do's and don'ts, of course. That was all part of that 8-week training that I received
Mm.
prior to the rest of my time in China. So and a big part of that was talking about the things we can talk about with Chinese locals and the things that we can't talk about,
Ah,
right?
okay.
So uh, there was, I'm trying to remember the acronym. There's so, when you work in the government, there's so many acronyms.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter if it's the Peace Corps or the State Department, or now I'm working with the, Department of Commerce. So there's always so many different acronyms, and I'm trying to remember the one they told us in the Peace Corps for this specifically. I think it was like the 3 T's, right? So the
Mhm.
3 things we're not supposed to talk about. So um, number one, of course, was the Tiananmen Square massacre, right, which
Mm.
happened in the 90s. It's a pretty dark period in
Mhm.
Chinese history. Um, so we weren't allowed to talk about that. We weren't allowed to talk about Tibet, right, which also
Mm.
there's
Mhm.
kind of a lot of issues going around that
Mhm.
today, and just I'll leave it at that.
Mhm. Yeah.
And we're also not allowed to talk about tariffs, right? The trade war that Trump so
Mm.
lovingly was calling, his relations with China. So those were the 3 things. And then also, of course, during my time there, things really started kind of heating up in Hong Kong with the protests there. So we
Oh
also weren't
yeah.
really
Yeah.
supposed to talk about Hong Kong. And also, much to my dismay, we were prohibited from actually traveling to Hong Kong. And so my province was
Mm.
super close to Hong Kong. Like a bullet train would only take like 3 hours to get there from my city.
Wow.
Um, and that
And they
was
were
one of the
like, no.
places I've always, yeah, they were like, nah. And that was one of the places I've always wanted to go the most in China, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that. Someday,
Mm.
I'm still hoping, but
Yeah.
um, yeah. So, and also, like generally, we weren't really encouraged to talk about politics too much
Mhm.
with the Chinese, right? So, really trying to. It was okay to talk about politics that didn't involve America or China. Right? We could talk about
Yeah.
like politics in other parts of the world.
Uh-huh.
Um, as far as like observing, you touched on this kind of like surveillance. That's
Yeah.
super apparent. So I know I mentioned previously in our conversation WeChat. I don't know if you ever heard of WeChat?
No, I don't know if I have. I imagine it to be like a WhatsApp of China type of
Okay,
thing.
right. So I've never heard of WeChat either, right? Until I came to China, my same thought. I was like, all right, it sounds like WhatsApp, but
Yeah. What's
WeChat.
up? Mhm.
So WeChat is basically the AI that runs China. So it's this incredible app that they have that kind of rolls all of how here in America, we have our maybe our app for our bank. We have like our app for social media, of course, Instagram, Facebook,
Yeah.
Twitter, whatever. We have our apps for like paying things like Apple Pay or whatever, right? We have our apps for like like Uber or like getting like food through like Instacart or DoorDash. So there,
Mhm.
all of those ideas, all those concepts, all those services, they're all rolled into one app, and that's
Whoa.
WeChat. And that kind of goes to show the centralization of China. Maybe, as you said, they're a communist country. They're essentially run a state economy in country, right?
Mhm.
So everything is centered. And so WeChat is a perfect analogy of all the centralization in this app. This is the app that does it all.
The
Uh, you,
one
you
app, the
can, you
one-stop
can,
shop.
the one-stop shop. You can communicate with it, both through social media, but also through like texting and calling and video calling. Oh, and everyone video calls. You don't really see many phone calls. Everyone's always doing the video call.
Really? The FaceTime. They're always doing the FaceTime.
Right, but it's WeChat, right?
Oh, but it's WeChatting.
But it's WeChat exactly. So, um, And anytime you like want to buy anything, they're super big on maybe you remember these, maybe you don't. They were kind of like a fad in like 2007, 2008 here in the States. But do you remember QR codes? Those
You
weird
are, yes, those little square
little,
codes.
yeah. And, you know, we kind of
Yeah.
laughed that off here in the
Yeah, we
States.
kind of like they came and then they
And
left.
then it kind of left, right?
Yeah.
But
They're,
in
they're
China,
around, but
they,
you know.
yeah, totally. They're still around, but,
Yeah.
you know, obviously it's not, I think they're making more of a comeback now, certainly
I
with
think they are too. Hmm.
contactless, you know, payments.
Hmm.
But China, see, they fully embraced QR codes. So, you know, here in the States, you know, when thinking about how like our money works and like commerce and the way we do business on the day to day, you know, we of course we started with like cash, right, like back in the
Hmm.
day, and then we kind of like evolved to like debit and credit cards, right? And I feel like
Hmm.
that's kind of still where we're mostly at today, right? And now we're starting to transition more to like mobile payments, right? Through like Apple Pay or even
Yeah.
QR codes here in the States are making a comeback. But in China, they kind of made the jump over credit cards and debit cards. So they went from cash straight to mobile payments through
Mm.
QR codes, primarily through WeChat. So WeChat has a
Whoa.
QR scanner on it. So anytime, you know, you go buy some food, like a bowl of noodles, or you need to
Mm.
like hail a cab or whatever, you just scan the QR code with your phone through WeChat, and it automatically deducts the payment from your bank account. And then
Whoa.
anytime you're with like in a group of friends, you know, big part of Chinese culture is everyone always covers each other. So like I'll have this round, you pay the next round, kind of deal. So
Mm.
and then
Okay,
they
I
have
like
these little
that.
things called red packets, which kind of ties into Chinese culture during weddings. Um,
Hmm.
every guest at the wedding gives the groom and the bride a red packet that's filled with money, right? Like that's the tradition. So WeChat cleverly incorporated red packets into their software. So anytime
Wow.
you want to send money to anyone that has
Uh-huh.
WeChat, you can send them a red packet
A
digitally. You
red
can just send
packet.
them a little bit of money like that. So every day, you know, like I go out with friends or whatever, get some food or go see a movie or you know
Hmm.
rent like some bikes or whatever. Just send them a red packet. That easy.
Little red packet, boom.
And also for the service, you know, you scan the QR code and pay that instantly and seamless. It's little things like that that I think
Hmm.
it's like a little change, but has a huge impact on like the daily life when like comparing, contrasting like everyday life here in the States versus there in China. Um, so so that's one thing that WeChat does. Obviously, pretty huge, pretty crucial. And yeah, I mean, like I said, all my communication was through WeChat, um, paying the bills, social media, all
Wow,
of that. So
everything.
right, but it kind of makes you also think about, well, from the point of view of the government, it's probably a lot easier for them to survey just that one app, right? That
Really.
everyone has.
Hmm.
Literally, everyone in China has this one app. And so the government in China is probably pretty easy for them to see exactly what people are up to. And all they have to do is monitor their activity on this one app, right? Like
Wow.
here in the States, we have all these different apps, right? All these different functions or we not don't even use an app, right? We might use a credit card or a debit card or cash or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So it's much more of kind of busy work and a hassle, right, for our government to survey all of that. In China, it's much more streamlined, right? So it's maybe little
Hmm.
things like that that you kind of notice as maybe a reflection of that
Hmm.
surveillance state, you know, that you kind of brought up. Also,
Hmm.
just noticing the amount of cameras that are everywhere, right? So like, uh, and I don't know, I don't think that's the case here in the States. I think it's becoming more and more, but you know, like street lights, street lamps.
Yeah.
Sometimes here you'll see there's a camera, but it's not like super common, right? Or
Yeah,
maybe
no,
it is,
and
and we
especially
just
not in like small cities. Maybe in San Francisco, New York, yeah, maybe some, but I have seen from videos online that China, I mean, they're everywhere, but who knows where I saw those videos from. But where you were in a lot of places, they were actually everywhere. Or,
yeah. So every single street lamp in China is a camera, like every
whoa,
single one.
every single one.
Like pretty much. That's
Yeah.
something I noticed that pretty much every single
Wow.
street lamp is a camera. So I mean, you're gonna get filmed no matter what. Like just taking a walk
Yeah.
outside, like I did every day. You know, at the lake that was next to the university. You're on this nice tranquil lake, you know, with a nice boardwalk that goes all around and the green little mountains everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, birds flying over you. And then of course there's the lamp with the camera, looking right at
Wow.
you. And sometimes you'll see the camera like swivel and like follow you. So
Ooh, like looking at you walk
yeah,
by.
yep. So
Oh,
noticing things like that. Definitely like the fact that China um, has only still recently, really kind of opened up to the rest of the world, so to speak, right? Since they became communist, they really only maybe even in like the last, uh, definitely like in the last 10 years and maybe like in the last 20 years have they really started like
mhm,
opening up, right, to the world and inviting people in, but also inviting people into like the interior where I was, right? I mean,
mhm.
cities like Hong Kong, Beijing, Shanghai, they're all metropolitan, right? There's people from all over the world in these cities, and it's very uncommon to see a foreigner that's not, uh, or very common rather, sorry, to see a foreigner, that's not Chinese there. However, in a city
Okay.
like mine, specifically, in Guizhou, which is one of the poorest provinces in China. Anshun is again just a small city of 1 million people. It's not really on the radar of like the place
Uh-huh.
to be in China. Like I said, I was basically virtually the only foreigner in that entire city. And so obviously that garners a lot of attention, both from the locals, the residents, but also from like the law, the authority, right? So um, constantly like kind of getting flagged down by police on the street, where they like will want to like check my passport. They want to know why I'm
Wow.
there, what I'm doing, like just for my profile. Also on the
Yeah.
trains, the cops, they'll walk up and down the car. Uh, the train cars, and
Mhm.
they'll see me and they'll immediately kind of
Really.
dive towards me, and yeah, exactly, and
Yeah.
literally seen that
Someone looking
reaction
at
so
you
many
be
times.
like, what is
Double
he
take.
doing?
Sometimes the double takes are hilarious.
Uh-huh.
You definitely have to get used to that if you're gonna go to that part of China, kind of feeling like almost like a celebrity, right? Like people
For
will
real.
always want to be taking your picture, either just of you or with you.
Really? Because like you're
Everyone wants to be
different.
like
You're just like, whoa.
everyone wants to like be your friend, right? Everyone wants to add you on WeChat, right? Everyone wants to be your WeChat friend. And that's like very like you have to, to turn down someone's WeChat friend request would be like a big slap in the face, right? So
Oh, okay.
constantly I'm like accepting all these people I know I'll never see again, never talk to again. And
Yeah.
albeit like when they're already gone, like I'll go in and like delete them again, because I know I'm never gonna see them. But I
Yeah.
would
But
never
you
like
had to accept so many people on the street
you
come up,
have to
oh, let me
accept it
get
on
you.
the spot, or so you don't offend them, right? So, and people are always trying to come up and like ask me who I am. They like really want to hear me either speak English or speak Mandarin, and yeah, so constant attention, both it's just impossible not to kind of stick out, right? So spotlight is always on, so you kind of have to get comfortable with that. Luckily, I'm a pretty social guy, so, and I love meeting new people, so I
Yeah.
take it with a grain of salt. But sometimes it gets a little annoying when I was just going on a run and it's like raining and I'm just like kind of in the zone, just trying to do my thing, and then I'm like I look behind me and there's like 7 people like literally running behind me, like trying to like
Oh, you like,
get to the
don't
yeah. So
do that.
yeah, so yeah, there's things
That's
like that.
smart.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you definitely see a lot more police in China,
Yeah.
but it's not always clear if they're actually like police, right? Because they have like neighborhood watch, right? That's another thing about China is like nobody, like they have it definitely in the countryside is more, but it's not very common, especially in the city, for people to like have their own homes. Like everyone lives in apartment blocks, right? These big
Mhm.
towers, 30, 40, 50 stories tall,
Wow.
and yeah, huge. And that's another thing. Like most buildings in the Chinese city are like a skyscraper. There's not really like small buildings. Like
Because they
almost
stack
every,
up vertical. They do
yeah,
vertical
like everything
construction.
exactly, very vertically stacked. All of their urbanization. So, um, and each of their neighborhoods are like in these kind of like they're literally like walled like compounds with like gates that you have to
Whoa.
like go through to like get into that compound to like get into your neighborhood or whatever. And each of those
Ah.
gates has like a little like check like point kind of like house, right? That like some guard will be like operating from, or multiple guards, right?
Mm.
So that's very prevalent, seeing stuff like that. They're always
Yeah.
scanning people. Um, yeah, like when I first came into the country, like day one in China, like as soon as I got off the plane and was being screened through the airport in Chengdu, they all siphoned all the foreigners, including us, of course, into like this special section of the airport that was like specifically for foreigners, where they like stuck
Mm.
us to these weird kiosks where like, we put our hands on like the computer screen, and they like, you'd see like the green laser come
Oh
down, like
yeah.
your fingers would get kind of hot. You're like, ooh, and then like you see like, then you have to like look in this thing, and the laser will like come down over your eyes, and then
The
like they take
Matrix.
like blood samples of you. So pretty like strict like biometric scannings like as soon as you get into the country,
Wow.
like right off the bat. So yeah, my DNA is definitely in some Chinese data bank
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, and
Somewhere.
will be forever. So kind of just have to accept that. And if you're a foreigner, that's something you have to accept as well when staying for longer than like 90 days or whatever in
Mm-hmm.
China, right? So um also, that's another thing, like if you're actually living in China and working in China, such as I was, there's a lot of like checks and balances that you have to do constantly when traveling. So anytime I want to leave my city, I have to notify like my city police department that I will
Wow.
be leaving, and then I have to tell them where I'm going. And then when I go to the new city,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm there for longer than a couple of days, sorry, there's like a fly flying around. I have to check in with the police department of that new city, and I have to
Mm.
like give them my visa, my
Dang, that's a
passport.
lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. So they definitely keep a very tight watch, especially on foreigners. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like, I'm sure, and it's obvious that they're watching their own people a lot, but you
Definitely.
don't really see it as much, right? Because everyone's kind of just used to it. They're kind of going through the day to day. But for someone like you
Mm.
or I, someone that's a foreigner who's not used to all these checks and balances, you really
Yeah.
are kind of like, whoa, like this is a lot.
You're
Like
looking at it all like, whoa,
exactly,
it's
and they're constantly
different.
monitoring you, constantly checking you,
Mm-hmm.
and constantly making sure that you're like checking in with them. So
Wow.
um,
So different.
yeah, that was definitely uh, prevalent for sure.
Uh-huh. Well, what's up with the food? We all love food. So what was your favorite food thing? And what
Oh
was
man.
like the craziest, like, I don't know if I can do that.
So yeah, I mean the food is great. I mean
Hmm.
Chinese food is always
So good.
been like my favorite. I guess what you realize though is like what we consider here in America Chinese food is like not actually
Not even
Chinese
real,
food, but
probably at
like
all. Like Oriental buffet is not what you got
no, that's
in.
actually American food. And it's funny when you think of American food, you think of like burgers and like hot dogs or whatever, but actually also American food are like egg rolls. They don't have egg rolls in China.
There's no
It's
egg rolls?
very There's no egg rolls. It's very American. And also like, how we put like soy sauce here on our rice and
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
They don't do that. They think
What?
it's weird. They think that they say that you only do that for cats. I was like, what? Yeah, we, we only put soy sauce on rice when you're feeding it to a cat. And I was like, I don't know about that. So I was always in my, I had my little like hole in the wall restaurant. It was
Hmm.
actually like a hole in the floor kind of restaurant that I loved going to in my local city in Anshun. I was
Hmm.
like a block down from my apartment in university, and they'd always know. Obviously, I'm the foreigner. I'm the teacher, the foreign teacher. So every time I walk in, they'd immediately sit me at that one spot because they knew I like to sit closest to the
Uh,
action. I like to always sit right next to. They had like an open kitchen, so
oh, so
you could
right
like
when they're
see
just.
everything. And I love just sitting right up there as close as possible. You could feel the heat off of the
Mm,
flames of like the oven and
that's so.
fire and stove, and getting all those fumes. And they knew they thought I was so weird for it, but they knew that I wanted soy sauce on my rice. So
They thought you were so weird
they
too. That's
always
so
brought me
funny.
my little thing of soy sauce to put on my
Uh,
rice, and they'd always like really attentively watch as I would like pour the soy sauce on my rice. They always thought it was like so funny that I would do that, and it always
oh,
cracked
it's
me up.
cracking me up.
And I like made a thing to like try to get them to try it, and
Mhm.
then funny enough, a lot of times they'd be like, "Oh, this is actually pretty good." And I'm
But
like,
that's like the
"Oh,
first time they've tried that.
first time, because it's for
Wow.
cats, right?"
Yeah,
So,
that's hilarious.
uh, and I always laughed. I'm like, "Well, I am a cat person, so go
Yeah.
figure." But anyways, yeah. So anyways, like true Chinese food, especially in the region that I was in, trying to get to your question, is
Mhm.
hot pot. Like hot pot in that region of China,
Uh,
Western China, Western South China, where I was, like there, that's like the spicy food region of China, which that's like my jam, right? So,
yeah.
they have this special spice. It's called, so their spice is a little different, right? Like our spice here, it's like from like peppers, right? Like
Hmm.
habanero or whatever, that's like actually like fire, like hot, right?
Yeah.
Their spice, and their like hot is more of like a numbing because they use this. It's called peppercorn, and it's literally this little like looks like a little bead kind of thing,
Yeah.
and they crush it up
Like a little
and they put it
seed
in
or
their food.
something.
Have you had it? Are you familiar with it?
Peppercorn, like little like black pepper from that you
It's
put in,
not black
but
pepper.
it's not like that.
It's
Yeah.
totally like its own thing. But
Okay,
it
I've never
does
had that. Hmm.
okay, it does somewhat when before it gets crushed up, it does kind of similarly look to like how our pepper looks before we crush it
Okay.
up. It's like those little beads, little black
Yeah.
beads. But anyways, they like crush it up and they put in everything and it makes it really spicy, but it's like numbing. It's this crazy sensation. So you like
Whoa.
eat the food. Like I remember my first time in Chengdu, we went to the super like like hot, no pun intended, like popping like
Yeah.
hot pot restaurant. And again, Holguo is the Mandarin word for it. So
Hmm.
Holguo, and um, and like of course, China is a very social country, of course, and a big part of that, of course, is eating. And the way people eat, it's not like here in the West where you kind of have your own portion, your own
Yeah.
plate, and like that's yours, right? It'd be kind of weird if like someone was like picking from your plate, right? But
Hmm.
in China, it's like the whole feast is like set in front of you with all the different portions, all the different foods, and then
Mm.
typically everyone has like their own little bowl with like rice, and that's like yours, and then you have your
Hmm.
chopsticks, and then you incrementally pick from the shared space in the middle, and everyone's
Ah.
picking from that and then eating from their bowl. Okay,
Family
and then
style kind of.
yeah, totally,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. It's very communal, and so the hot pot, they have they have like these special tables um, that you sit at, and like in the middle of the table, it like dips down in the very middle, and that's where the pot is in,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's like this big pot, and then it's filled with this crazy like broth that has all the
Mm.
numbing pepper in there and all the other flavors and spices, and then you get all the food brought out, and it's all raw, both the meat and veggies, and then you drop it in the pot, and it's so hot in the pot that it cooks the food, right?
Whoa.
And then you take it out of the pot and then put it in your bowl and eat from there.
Oh, that sounds so
Oh,
good.
it's delicious,
That
man.
sounds so. Is
Oh
that
man, it's
broth
so
just unlike anything else, or what? Like broth is like so much of the good, you know? Like
yeah.
that broth
So
must have been
so the
so
broth's
bomb.
pretty extreme. Like it's not to be taken lightly, right? It's
Oh, you
not
don't
like
just like ladle it and
yeah, it's not like something you really want to like drink straight up, right? Like you maybe only have a little bit, but most of that broth you're getting off of the actual food you're eating. Because especially
Mm,
us Westerners, right? Our
not
stomachs aren't
ready.
really accustomed to all the
Ah,
bacteria that Chinese people are accustomed to, right? So you'll definitely make the bathroom your office for the next first few months
yeah.
when you move
As
to
you're
China. You
adjusting.
definitely adjust a lot of
Yeah.
adjusting, and hot pot's famous for really kind of getting the juices flowing, right? So
Oh, yeah.
you kind of have to be careful with that broth, but it's definitely super bomb. It's super good.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so that's like the thing all the young
Okay,
people
the
and
hot pot.
everyone's
Let's
wanting
go
to have
get
is
hot
hot pot,
pots.
and it's the
Hmm.
social thing to do when you go out with a group of friends on like a Friday night or whatever. The
Hmm.
first thing you always do is you go to the closest local hot pot restaurant. You eat your hot pot. You have a few meals there through a few courses for a couple of
Hmm.
hours. Uh, they also have their national drink, which is called baijiu, and it's kind of like their version of
Baijiu.
like baijiu. Yeah, it's kind of like their version of vodka. It's made out of rice,
Okay.
and it's clear, and it's super high in alcohol content. It's like 56% alcohol.
Oh
It's
my gosh,
yeah,
that's high.
it's very intense. And actually, the
Whoa.
province, yeah, huh?
I just said, whoa.
Yeah, it's intense. Yeah, and so the province that I was in Guizhou, actually makes the all of China's most famous brand of baijiu. It's called Mao Tai, and so this is like top of the shelf stuff. And of course, when I'm getting invited to all these dinner parties by all my Chinese friends, you know, the first thing they want to do is make sure I'm eating hot pot, and the next thing they want to do is Chinese people have this like idea for whatever reason that foreigners are like really good at drinking alcohol. So
Uh-huh.
they want
Well,
to
the
like
movies kind of make it seem like that.
yeah, right. And so they just believe that we're able to like hold our alcohol like
Oh
very
gosh.
well. So they really will like they'll want you to eat and then they'll want you to drink and they want to drink with you. So
They want you to drink a lot.
and you want you to drink a lot. So you're eating this
Mhm.
really spicy food, you're drinking like this really extremely intense and like kind of spicy alcohol and then it's China, it's South China, so the air is already hot, the humidity, I'm already dripping sweat all the
Oh
time.
wow, I didn't even think about that. It's hot
Oh
too.
yeah, so
Oh
like
my
I'm
gosh.
constantly red, constantly sweating, and a lot of feelings, right, going
Mhm.
on in my head, so in my body. So it's a good time,
That
and
sounds so fun, bro. That sounds like a
yeah,
great time.
and then
Meeting
they
new
round off the
people.
night by doing the local karaoke bars, which they call
Mm.
KTV. So they love in China they love karaoke.
I love
So
karaoke.
yeah, so yeah, they'll have these karaoke bars where they're like these big like theater rooms,
Hmm.
and all your favorite songs will be on this computer terminal that's like touch screen, and you like pick your song, and then it projects it out on the screen, and it has all the words, and you can sing along, and they have microphones, and everyone in China loves doing the KTV bars.
That's so
So you
funny.
eat your hot pot, you drink your baijiu, and then you go sing karaoke till 3 or 4 in the morning,
Cool.
and that's basically a night out in China. That's how they
Mm.
like to have fun.
That sounds like a great time. And are they singing American songs in English or are they singing in Mandarin?
Both.
Both.
Yeah, sometimes
Uh-huh.
it's pretty great to see how a lot of Chinese people actually learn to speak English through songs, right? Through karaoke, and they'll like
Mm.
watch music videos of like American like pop stars and stuff, and yeah,
Wow.
that's how they'll like learn to speak English. So
Interesting.
it's pretty interesting to see. Yeah.
That's great. Okay, so for the food, oh my God, the hot pot. Was there anything? Okay, the
You asked
ocean.
me, was there something crazy, right? Was
Yeah, is
there
there
like
anything crazy? I'm thinking
okay.
like, I've seen videos like squids moving in little
Yeah.
bowls, but maybe that's more like by the ocean. Or is China just have some parts by the ocean, right?
Yeah, so they have a whole coastline, and that's where all the big cities are, like Beijing, Hong Kong,
Okay.
Shanghai. But I was
But you were
inland,
inland, huh?
so I mean, there was some seafood, but not really a lot. No, what was crazy for me was like yeah, the third day in China, going to that big hot pot place in
Mm-hmm.
Chengdu. We were eating all kinds of crazy things, so like cow brain was
Oh,
definitely a big
whoa.
one. So first time
Whoa.
eating brain, like
That's
pig
so,
brain.
yeah.
So uh, honestly, I know this is crazy, but it's not as bad as it sounds. It's
It's
got a weird taste. It's like super like metallic. In China, there's a joke they would tell me that a Chinese person will eat anything with 4 legs as long as it's not a table, right? So they'll so they really do not waste their food, right? So um, yeah, I ate cow brain, like duck head. The one that I absolutely was not down with, and will just I to the day I die, I'll refuse to be down with, are the chicken feet. I just don't really see the
Ooh.
point. They're super
Uh-huh.
like kind of gross and scaly and
They just
rubbery and
look hard. Like
big nails. They love them. They absolutely love them.
they
So
nails, they eat the fingernails or
I
talons.
don't. They like spit it around in their mouths and stuff. Like they're about it. Like
Woo!
yeah, and like they'll like have like these chicken feet like popsicle sticks that you'll see little kids walking around the streets just like eating this big popsicle stick with like a chicken foot all on it, and
Yeah, like the
so that's
talons.
kind of crazy. But yeah, I
Oh my
mean,
God.
it's a lot. It's a
It's
very
so different.
diverse and dynamic diet that they have.
Mhm.
But honestly, overwhelmingly delicious. Delicious food. I
Mhm.
mean, the noodles amazing. The rice and vegetables and all the meats and just all the different ways of cooking everything, all the different flavors and spices.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, honestly, uh, just great. It was awesome. It was awesome to
Nice.
see.
Heck yeah, bro. Well, what would you tell somebody? We're probably getting to the end here. What would you tell someone if they wanted to go into the Peace Corps? Where would they start looking online, or what would there be their first like kind of steps?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the first step would be to identify kind of like what district as I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, like what district you kind of fall into. So like for us here in Humboldt, you fall into the Northern Bay Area district, and then you want to find like who your district representative is. So in this case, it'd be Barbara, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you would basically go on their website. I mean, the best way to start is look at peacecorps.gov, right?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of see, what that's all about. They have all their listings on there. They have all their requirements. You do need a degree to apply. So you need at least a bachelor's to apply to the Peace Corps. Um, and then you also need to just kind of see, what all the requirements are. Each program kind of has their own specific requirements, right? So I would say the website is probably the best place to start. And on the website you can also find like what your district is, and
Oh,
like who
that's
your
okay.
representative would be. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I would say just type in peacecorps.gov and go
Mm.
from there.
Nice. So you have to have a bachelor's. Is there any other pressing like requirements? Like, is there an age limit?
I think there is an age limit. It's pretty up there though. I think it's like
Mhm.
61 or
Oh,
something.
okay.
So
Mm-hmm.
most people don't need to worry about that. And there's definitely a lot of like medical checks. I think this is the one that kind of prevents a lot of people from going. There was certainly a lot of medical tests I had to undertake before actually going. So getting
Mm.
like your EKG and like getting like your x-rays and like a physical and like all these different checks that they need to check off. You can't
Mm-hmm.
have like any too serious like health conditions. Also, if you're like prescribed medication, it has to be like a type of medication that would be like easily accessible wherever you're going, right?
Oh,
uh,
okay.
Things like that. So kind of more on like a logistical side. And this is of course all like, of course, safety concern first, for the volunteer to
Mm-hmm.
make sure they're safe, but also like on a legal side, so the Peace Corps isn't liable for any mishaps that might happen due to your medical condition while you're there.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I think that's probably the main thing to keep in mind. Yeah, and like I said, a bachelor degree. Um, Also, like they definitely, they don't just hire anyone. They definitely want specific kinds of people. So,
Mm-hmm.
really encouraging people that are thinking about joining it, really start volunteering now in your local community. Like for myself, for example, I spent years volunteering here in Humboldt before. I was the director of a nonprofit organization as well, so that definitely helped. And um, doing as much volunteer experience, getting that as you can, so that when you're doing the application process, you're putting together the Peace Corps resume, you're able to fill that up with, experience that's relevant to the position that you're applying. So, um, yeah,
That's
definitely
a very good
things
tip.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
And also like, make sure you have good references, right? So the Peace Corps, for the final application, they'll ask for like two specific references, like two individuals. And so like the two people that I picked, of course, were actually people that one of my professors from HSU who happened to be in the Peace Corps himself back in the day.
Oh,
And
awesome.
then also one of my previous bosses that I had from one of my jobs, who she was also in the Peace Corps. So for me, I had really strong references because both of those people were in the Peace Corps. And like that isn't a requirement that your references have to be Peace Corps people. That's just what I did because I figured, that would work
Yeah.
well in my case. And yeah, so keeping in mind that you'll need good references, you'll need good experience, and you'll need to really show, like, just through the things that you've done, that you have a strong sense for leadership, for advocacy, for volunteering, for all these kinds of things, and also the resilience. You are going to be put in high stress environments, and oftentimes, like I mentioned in this podcast, you're gonna have to deal with isolation, like cultural isolation, where you're kind of a stranger in a strange land, so to speak. So
Mm-hmm.
um, really kind of have to uh, just prepare for that, and also let the people know at the Peace Corps when you're applying and interviewing that you are capable and able to handle being in those kinds of situations, right? That you're
Mm-hmm.
adaptive. They really cherish adaptability in the Peace Corps. That's one of the highest tenets that they want to see in the people that they hire. So if you're highly adaptable and you feel like you deal well with change and that you're able to immerse yourself into new environments that you might have not had any experience with, I'd say sign up for the Peace Corps. That sounds like the right thing for you to do.
Awesome. Well, that's a great pitch. I think that adaptability and acceptability and being able to be mindful in those tough, stressful situations is definitely applicable for something like the Peace Corps and other things in life. I mean, after coming back from the Peace Corps, even though you didn't spend all that, the whole 27 months, I'm sure you learned so much, and that's only going to boost your professional career and help yourself out, for your mind, body, and soul, and then also your professional development career. So I think Peace Corps is definitely an overall amazing thing if anybody could do it, to battle all the challenges of the red tape to get there and then actually apply and do it. I think it's a great life experience.
Yeah, I think the most important thing to kind of end off this podcast is,
Mm-hmm.
the whole point of the Peace Corps is to expose the world to Americans, but also expose Americans to the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as much as the world might be learning about us and who we are as Americans, we're also learning about them. And it's very important. So then when we come back, such as, this is a great opportunity. That's why I love to be able to come on this podcast with you, is, help share my story and my experiences, and help perhaps, help foster a closer understanding, better understanding between our culture and China's, and vice versa, and really foster that peace, right? It's in the name. And that's the whole idea, is that we're building relationships that last. We're building friendships that, move forward into the future.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, that's an awesome way to end the podcast. I think we'll end right there. It was a great time talking to you, bro. It's been years since
Likewise.
I've seen you, so I'm super
Same.
glad that you're doing well and everything's looking great. You're on your side. So much love, dude. I'll be talking to you
Thanks a lot.
soon. Yeah, you take it easy. I'll let you know when this is on YouTube, and
Yeah.
spread the word, brother.
Spread the word, man. Take it easy.
Yeah, take it easy, man.
Later.
Bye. Wow, you listened to the whole podcast. Aren't you just the best? If you could do one more thing to prove that you're the best, it's go subscribe to my YouTube channel, because it'll super help me out and it'll mean the world to me if you could just give it a little beep subscribe button on your phone or on your laptop, a little mouse click for your boy. It'd be super helpful for me to build my presence on these platforms. Have a good day. Thank you. Bye.